your smartphone, because we're going to do something we haven't done before. We're going to try to have a Kahoot game, a little game where we could be somewhat interactive and have some fun. So like this, we could just keep our activity, be in the Purim festivity, be in the Purim mode. And of course, if anyone has any specific questions about Purim, last year Purim is when the masks came on. This year Purim, we still have them on. Hopefully we get to take them off in due time, very soon. Maybe by the end of Purim, we could take these masks off. But at the moment, perhaps this is one of the messages about the mask. It's like the Hamantash. And the idea of the masks is this is God's way of communicating with us, God's way of letting us know God's presence in the world. Like in the Purim story, where it wasn't apparent, where it wasn't noticeable, where we didn't see God's presence all of the time. And that's the reason we wear masks, to show us the fact that it's camouflaged in nature. So let's just go through a few of the things. Purim, today is Tainus Esther. It is a fast day, so you don't see my coffee around. The last liquid I had was sometime yesterday. Who knows when, but that's no big deal. Most days I don't really eat or drink too much till later in the day. And this evening is when the Purim festivities begin. So make sure at Mincha today, and even if you're doing Mincha at home, then you're going to give some extra charity, because the custom is to give what's called Machzis HaShekel. This is the time of the year when we give our half coins to charity, which was symbolic of the times of the temple, when Jews gave their contribution towards the Mishkan, towards the tabernacle, towards the upkeep, the maintenance of the Beis HaMikdash itself. Now, tonight we get into the Purim festivities. And the festival of Purim commemorates the salvation of the Jewish people who lived in ancient Persia from Haman's plot, as we read in the Megillah, lahareg, la'abed, to annihilate, to destroy, to kill all the Jews, young and old, infants, women, men, one single day, to kill everyone. So we should just focus on some of the specific observances of the day, and then I'm going to test you with my Kahoot game. Okay, so here's a few points to keep in mind. First of all, there is a custom, and this is not one of the 4 mitzvahs. The main 4 mitzvahs we discussed in previous classes are to hear the Megillah. It's 4 M's, just remember the M's. Hear the Megillah, give Mishlach Manas. It fosters friendship, camaraderie amongst our colleagues and friends. To give Matanat Levyonim, gifts to the poor, and then to have a Mishteh, a Purim meal. So the 4 M's again. Megillah, Shlach Manas, Matanas Levyonim, and a meal. And those are the specific laws that are mentioned in the Megillah. And tonight you hear the Megillah, tomorrow you do all the mitzvahs. But of course we wear masks, we dress up, and we have to recall that dressing up is a way that emphasizes the ideas that were discussed, that we highlight in the Purim, in Purim holiday, what Purim is about. Because if the Purim story is one of divine providence, one that demonstrates the idea that everything is orchestrated by God, and God hears our cry, God knows our struggles. So I guess you could say that the idea of dressing up is that, there's nothing natural about nature. Nature is just God's way of managing the details without showing off. And, we emphasize it by our fancy dress. It's not Halloween. It's a moment to recognize, to reflect, to show thanks for all the daily miracles that we experience in our lives. And so we're going to read the Megillah tonight. And it's actually the only book in all of Tanakh where God's name is not mentioned even once. So that is sort of illustrating God's invisible hand in history. We know the end of the story. We not only survived, but thank God we thrive. We triumph because of the unity, the unshakable commitments to our identity, to be proud, to practice as Jews. And that was yesterday's discussion, which we discussed in greater detail at length. Any questions, by the way, from yesterday's discussion? Any questions specifically related to Purim that you want me to talk about? If you do have questions, don't hesitate. If you have anything.
Rabbi,
Yes.
that's the only. Is
Yes,
there any way I can hear the Megillah on?
Unless you go in person to a Megillah reading, what you can do otherwise is to go online, go on to Zoom, not to Zoom because we're not going to have Zoom readings, but you can go online and follow along. But it's more important that you read the Megillah, that you read the story, than to hear the story. So if you can't make it to shul, very, very important that what you should do is you should listen, you should read the Megillah yourself at home. That's more important. Read it to your family, discuss it at home. And I think that would be better than missing it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from anyone about Purim? We're going to get into some fun stuff in a moment. So let's just remember, you read the Megillah, give the charity tomorrow. You could certainly fulfill that mitzvah by supporting our Chabad programs that are helping many people in our community with food parcels and many other ways over Purim. And please, God, will get as many shalach manas out to as many people as we can tomorrow. I'm personally going to almost 20 retirement facilities personally, and the rest I'm leaving for our volunteers, which I hope they'll make it out to everyone, to as many people as possible. If any of you want to help out and be part of it and be a distributor, then please do touch base with me and let me know. I want to go through some of the customs and laws of Purim before we get to the fun stuff, because after all, it is it's an important day, and I think it's important that we go through many of the laws that are relevant. So this morning, we started the fast at about 10 to 5 or so here. And I'm not going to go through the laws of the fast. Obviously, only those who are strong and able to should be fasting today. And in Shacharis, we added additional prayers called selichos, supplications, asking God for additional forgiveness, as Esther did on this day when she fasted. And what she said was to gather all the people together, because that's the antidote to our vulnerability to Haman's plot. Now, today, before Mincha, I mentioned before, you give the machzis hashekel by giving to tzedakah 3 half coins. And the question is, what currency? Well, you could say half a rand. Ideally, it should be half shekels. So if you come to my shul, we're going to have the shekels at shul. But if you're going to any other shul or you're at home, then maybe a 50-cent coin. Ideally, you want something that's silver. Excuse me. What could I do? I already finished my dissertation, yet I'm still not getting enough rest. Maybe I have to make it up. All right. The idea is that we have to give that extra charity. So if you can do half coins, great. You're maintaining the custom. Otherwise, give what you can. So there's today, and then again there is, besides for today, you also want to give your tzedakah tomorrow. Tomorrow's the mitzvah of Purim of giving tzedakah, and today is the concept of the machzis hashekel. And then this, by the way, should be done for each member of the family. So, ideally, your children should be doing it for themselves. If they can't, then I guess it's another discussion. Then you could do it on their behalf. A few of the other things that come to mind that are important that you have to know about the rules for today, without getting too specific in particular about the rules for prayers, but mincha. Today, at mincha, you would say ashrei, and if you're at shul, it would be a half kaddish. And then we read from the Torah. The portion is Vayechal. It's actually from next week's Parsha. Vayechal Moshe. This is the story where Moshe asks God for forgiveness for the Jewish people. We read this on every single fast day. This is particularly related to the golden calf. And that was part of why we built the tabernacle. It was part of our atonement process. So if you're at shul, the aliyahs are given to people who fast, particularly. And just on that note, fasting, like I said, should only be if you are up to it, if you're healthy. But then again, if you're not fasting, you don't have to indulge in all the delicacies and all the goodies that you would eat, otherwise on an ordinary day. Okay, after the Torah reading, there is a Haftarah reading. And this Haftarah reading starts with the word Dirshuas Hashem b'himatzai k'ra'u b'yosei karayv. Seek out God while God is accessible. And we're told that on days of fasting, days like today, there is a little bit more of that accessibility, that God is more forgiving, and this is an appropriate day to be certainly reaching out and doing what we can to connect to Hashem in a more deeper and more meaningful, personal way. In the Amida today, we added an extra prayer called Anenu, which again means Hashem, answer us. So these are specific additional prayers that are said in the Amida. Now there is a custom on fast days that the rabbi gives what's called Divrei Kivushim, words that arouse the listeners to do teshuvah, to repent. So I don't know how practical that is, especially if you're not going to shul. But I think if you're not going to shul, it's even easier, because you can inspire yourselves. You could say some extra tehillim. You can do whatever it might be that will get you into that mode that you are being more inspired to on this day as we should be. And speaking of inspiration, I thought of some ideas to mention. I'm not sure which way to go. We obviously will have a lot to talk about today. And I told you I'm going to try some fun activities with you as well. But there's a little joke that comes to mind. There was once a millionaire who would collect live alligators, and he kept them in the pool in the back of his behind his mansion. Anyways, he had this beautiful daughter. Daughter was single, and one day he decides he's going to throw a huge party. And during the party, he announces, "My dear guests, I have a proposition to every man here. I will give 1 million, where was he? In euros, or my daughter, to the man who could swim across this pool full of alligators." Okay? Obviously, if you could emerge unharmed. So as soon as he finished his last word, there was already a sound of a splash. Boom, somebody's in the pool. The guy in the pool was swimming with all his might. The crowd is all cheering for him. And finally, thank God, he made it to the other side of the pool unharmed. The millionaire is impressed. He says, "That was incredible, fantastic, wonderful. I don't think it could have, I never thought this could have been done." He says, "I have to keep my end of the bargain. You want to marry my daughter? You want the €1 million? What do you want?" The guy's finally catching his breath. And he says, "Listen, I don't want your money and I don't want your daughter. I want the idiot who pushed me into the pool." So, yes, the thought in that, why this comes to mind, is because one of the ideas, one of the insights we're going to read in the Megillah tonight, and it's like some way before the halfway mark of the Megillah, is the many moving parts of the story that we read from the beginning, and you pay attention. I was reading a little bit to my kids, and I've been preparing so I could read the Megillah. I have 20 Megillah readings that I'm scheduled for over this Purim so far, and you never know if another few will be thrown in between. So I've been preparing a little bit. And here's the thing. Queen Vashti is already dead. And you have the secretly Jewish Esther is already appointed in her place. Haman already has his prominent position as the prime minister. And he is plotting to kill the Jewish people. He has this hatred of Mordechai. He devises his whole scheme, his plan. Achashverosh seals the deal. The decree is already in place. And it's actually sent throughout the entire empire on this day, the 13th of Adar, which is today, all Jews to be executed, all Jews to be killed. And all of a sudden, we get into the fourth chapter, right? The Megillah is 10 chapters. In the fourth chapter, Mordechai gets wind of this plot. And all the pressure that has been building up during the story is ready to blow. Most of us know how the story reaches its conclusion and the resolution. And we celebrate tonight, tomorrow, Purim. Thank God, we survive and thrive. And after Esther arranges for those two grand feasts with Achashverosh and with Haman, she reveals her Jewish identity, and she's able to convince the king to change the decree. It's very interesting that he couldn't actually just annul the decree. He had to create another decree that basically gives the Jews the right to defend themselves. And then Haman and his sons are hanged on the gallows, which I'm going to give away that little riddle that my wife asked the kids last night at supper. Who had the biggest family tree? Haman. He and his 10 sons were hanged on the tree on the gallows. And the Jews take on their would-be genocide committers, and they end up celebrating the very first holiday of Purim. But the events that take place during the setup and the whole Megillah story, as we read it in the fourth and fifth chapters, there's some thoughts that come to my mind. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to unpack them with you and share them with you, because the scene opens with Mordechai. He discovers Haman's plot, and he's lamenting, he's crying the tragic fate that the Jews are facing. Right? That's as the story goes. Mordechai comes, he discovers everything that's going to happen, and Mordechai, he rents his clothing, and he puts on sackcloth and ashes. It's a way of a sign of mourning. And he goes out into the midst of the city, and he's crying, and we describe a loud and bitter cry. And he came as far as the king's gate, but you're not allowed to enter the king's great gates dressed in such deplorable clothing and sackcloth. And Esther hears of Mordechai's dramatic conduct, and she sends a messenger out to Mordechai. She said, "What's going on here? What are you behaving like a lunatic?" And Mordechai fills her in with the details. And he asks her, "Please beseech your husband, King Achashverosh, ask him to rescind this horrible decree." And as we discussed in yesterday's shir, she hesitates. She says if she's simply going to burst into the royal chambers with this list of demands, then remember what happened to Vashti. She also could be killed. She doesn't want to have the same fate that her predecessor, that Queen Vashti had. So we continue with the story as it's in the Megillah. And in Esther's own words, what does she say? Kol avdei hamelech ve'am medinos hamelech yodim. Everybody knows, all the king's servants, all the people, anyone who lives in these provinces knows. Asher kol ish ve'isha asher yabelef el hamelech el chatar pnimis. Anyone who comes to the king's inner court, asher lo yikore, who is not summoned, achasda salahamis, is one law, one rule, one destiny, execution, death. Levad me'asher yoshet lehem melech hashrati v'azal, unless, except if the king will extend his golden scepter. Then you get to live. Va'ani lo nikres v'el hamelech zeh shloshim yoim. But I, she says, I have not been summoned to the king already for 30 days. But Mordechai, he pushes her. He doesn't let her go. He tells her she has to act. She has to act now. We discussed yesterday's class. If you didn't watch it, go back to our archives. And he has this urgency. He makes it critical. And he says, Al tadami b'nafsheich. Do not imagine to yourself lihimalet beis hamelch mikol hayudim, that you will escape the fate of all the Jews. Ki machareish tachrishi ba'eis hazois. He tells her, because if you remain silent at this moment, at this time, revach v'atzaloi moed layudim mimakoi macher. Relief and rescue, salvation will come to the Jews from another place. But you and your family will perish. And who knows whether it was this moment, for this very moment, that you were assigned this position, that you became the queen, that you are Queen Esther. Now Esther is confronted with a dilemma that she has to wrestle with alone. She knows the fate of the Jewish people hangs in the balance, and that she has to act, she has to do something, and only she is in the position to help her brothers and sisters. But is she going to risk her life to do so? Does she go along with Mordechai's hostility? That Mordechai Mordechai says, go in, ignore the odds that are stacked against you. What if she goes and dies? What if the king kills her like he killed Vashti? And then it's the same story. What has she gained? Now, of course, we know that Esther goes. She takes the leap. We discussed this at great length yesterday. But remember, there's an intense drama at this moment. Esther was facing this life and death question, and Mordechai had to persuade her. And in fact, out of all the characters to appear in the Megillah story, Esther's the only one who experiences any personal drama. All the other personalities, they remain static characters throughout the story. Esther's an evil Jew hater. Mordechai remains the righteous tzaddik, a constant force of good at all times. Achashverosh is a fool. First, he killed his wife on account of his friend. Then he killed his friend on account of his wife. Anyways, with all the personalities, each one, Achashverosh just is that what do you call him? A capricious, vacillating back and forth. First manipulated by Haman, then driven by his affection for Queen Esther. But it's Esther who must grow and develop as a person. She has that doubt and reservation. She's not sure if she should go, and she rises to the challenge. She alone is made to dig deep within, and she musters the courage. She faces her fears. She has to do something that she wouldn't otherwise. Esther is the moral center of the entire story, the entire tale. That's why it's called Megillas Esther, not even Megillas Mordechai the Esther. It's called Megillas Esther because she is the protagonist, she's the personality, she's the one who faces that predicament, that position where she knows she can save the people. And this is her internal debate about doing this. And she takes that deep breath. She takes the plunge. What does Esther respond to Mordechai? It's called Hayudim. Go, assemble, gather all the Jews together who are in Shushan. And go get them to fast, not to eat, not to drink for 3 days. And she says, me and my maidens also will be fasting on this day. And thus I will go to the king, asher lo chadas, even if it's against the law. Chasher avadeti, avadeti. And if I perish, so I'll perish. So how did Mordechai persuade Esther to sacrifice her life? Now, yesterday we discussed it from one angle. Today I'm going to look at it from another perspective. It's Mordechai's argument. There's 3 points. First of all, he says, don't think you're going to remain in the palace. You'll be safe there. And if the Jews die, you too will die, he says. The Jewish people are going to be saved with you or without you, is Mordechai's persuasive argument. But if you remain silent at this moment, then you will be lost forever, you and your entire progeny, your entire family. Or actually, he says more specifically, your father's family. Atu beis avich tavedu. And then finally he says, and who even knows if it is for this moment that God has made you the queen in order that you have this opportunity to save the Jewish people. And if we just analyze this, dissect this point by point, very straightforward. Esther's own safety is already in jeopardy because she's Jewish. So not attempting to beseech King Ahasuerus won't save her, won't help her if it will be discovered that she's a Jew and all Jews are to be executed. This capricious king, he'll do what he has to do. They'll discover she's Jewish. If every Jew was meant to be targeted, even the intermarried ones, just think about what happened a mere 75 years ago in the Holocaust. And the second point he makes is also quite forceful. The Jewish people are going to be saved regardless. But if you don't step up to the plate, he says, then you are losing your entire legacy, your entire purpose of why you're even here. And so the consequences of her not doing her part in saving her people, it wouldn't help, because help will come regardless. Question is if you'll play your part, if you'll play your role. And the third point, which doesn't seem very strong compared to this, what is he saying? Who knows? Perhaps this is the moment you were destined to be the queen for, to save your people. But if Esther wasn't going to be convinced, if Esther is going to be unswayed by everything else, by the prospect of her family's destruction and by the annihilation of her people, is this point really going to convince her that this is the reason why she became queen? Imagine Mordechai gives you an instruction to go on some dangerous mission, and this mission would be, to save the entire people from genocide, including yourself and your whole family. Do you think he's going to add any motivation by telling you, by the way, besides for saving your people and yourself, you'll also be fulfilling the task for which you were given this position. You'll be doing your job. It seems insignificant to the primary motivation that he's mentioning in the first place. Not just to do your job, this is about your life, your people, your family. And what makes this argument even weaker is, it seems a little bit insensitive. Mordechai, he goes, who knows? Could be a little bit more convincing. Why doesn't he say, this is the reason? Maybe this is the reason you're queen. Out of every single girl in the entire Persian Empire, God might have chosen a single Jewish girl to become the queen to save the entire Jewish people. But maybe, I'm not sure. Miodea. This is how Mordechai hopes to inspire her to take this momentous leap, to walk into Achashverosh uncalled for. He's saying, we don't really need you. But if you want to risk your life, might be a great story and you'll be doing your job. This doesn't seem to be exactly the words you want to hear before marching off to the jaws of death. She was really risking her life going into Achashverosh. You think, couldn't Mordechai have come up with anything a little bit more rousing, convincing, inspiring? So before I even address this, I want to turn to one of the oldest problems in Jewish philosophy. One of the most interesting debates spanning millennia is if we should try to make sense of life. Should we try to explain God? Or is it a useless and foolish endeavor? What do you think? For example, why do we do all the mitzvahs? Is there a real logic to the mitzvahs? Do they really make sense to you? Strapping leather around our arm every day, putting on tefillin? Dunking in a mikveh, laws of purity and impurity? Kosher, non-kosher? Does it make sense why anyone else can eat pork, ham, bacon, lobster, schmobster? Why we have to eat matzah cardboard for 9 days coming up in a month? Sitting in a sukkah, blowing a shofar? What else comes to mind? These tzitzis, I call them the fringe benefits of Judaism. Do all these things make sense? Why you drink 4 cups of wine and counting 49 days of the Omer? Or offering sacrifices? Oh, I can't turn on a flame on Shabbos, but a goy, a Gentile, can. Why we have to fast on Yom Kippur? Can't wear wool and linen mixed together? What's wrong with a cheeseburger? Doesn't it look tempting from McDonald's sometimes? Actually, to me, it doesn't, but, Do they really have logic? Or is logic irrelevant? This is what God wants. This is what we do. And Jewish thinkers, philosophers, authors, they've really been split on this. Some, like Maimonides, have a very rational approach. And others felt that it's futile, it's child play. To wrap your puny brain around God is like wrapping your tongue around the sun. Good luck. Maimonides wrote a book, Moreh Nevuchim, familiar with it? The Guide to the Perplexed. And where he dedicated a section to explain the rationale for almost all of the mitzvahs. And in one passage from Mishnah Torah, he expresses the principle. He says that it's appropriate for a person to meditate on the judgments of the Holy Torah and to know their ultimate purpose according to your capacity. So Rambam's telling us that even the irrational mitzvahs that are called chukim, those super rational instructions, Rambam believes I should try to rack my brain and understand them as best as I can. And not only Rambam, Nachmanides also talks about this. He tells us how we have to try to understand the purpose, the reason behind the mitzvahs. And in fact, he wrote a whole book explaining the mitzvahs and the reasons and understanding of why we observe, why we do the mitzvahs, because after all, he says we should try to understand why on earth we're doing each of these things. And there's different types of commandments. Eidos, which is testimony, like Shabbos, God created the world on 6 days, rested on the 7th. By us observing Shabbos, we are testifying to God's creation of the world. And Pesach, we are testifying to God's rescuing our ancestors from their slavery in Egypt. And each of the holidays, each of the festivals are the same. Then, of course, we have other laws such as mishpatim, don't kill, don't steal. Those are rational laws. And rational laws, make sense to us. And of course, then come the chukim. Those are laws that we call statutes. These are laws that are beyond our comprehension. Like, why do I have to keep kosher? As much as you might make sense of it, kosher is not healthier. Have you been eating hamantashen? You know how many calories we're packing on with that? And think about all the other goodies. You better be careful of a Purim. Every year of a Purim, we put on a few kilos. Soon I'll be as big as a few kilometers. You got to be careful with the kilograms you consume. And yet we are told that even those irrational, the super rational laws, we have to observe them like the mishpatim, like the laws. Sorry, the opposite. Even the rational laws, the mishpatim, we have to observe them even like the super rational laws, just because God said so. But this debate is one that's been going on amongst many Jewish thinkers and philosophers. Many dealing with great philosophical problems. How should we approach, let's take the biggest question. Why did God create the world? What's the ultimate purpose of life? Why are we here? And there's all types of reasons given. God is good. God wanted to share his goodness with us. God is giving us the opportunity to know him, to connect with him. God wanted a relationship with us. All types of wonderful reasons that we learn and understand that God is perfect and God wished to experience imperfection so that he too can grow through our growth. These are all philosophical answers and explanations discussed. And there are others that say it's futile. What do you think? You're guessing? How do you know that reason even makes any sense? It'd be like trying to explain your, something to your goldfish in quantum mechanics. Go ahead, try. So it's like, what's that story? Trying to recall. About the philosophy professor giving a final exam to his class after 4 years of studying. And they're preparing for months for this exam. And there's like 100 tough questions they're expecting. The day the exam arrives and the students sit down, everyone's, in trepidation and anticipation, what's going to be. And they receive the exam. They saw it had one single question. One word. Clive, you here? Question was, why? So the students began writing pages and pages of answers, each one explaining why, all the philosophical ideas and ideas from Plato to Nietzsche to you name it, all the philosophers. Anyways, they all submit their exams and the professor failed them all. Only 2 students passed. One got an A and the other got an A+. What did they answer? The first one gave one word, why? Because. So he got an A. The second student, why? He says, why not? He got an A+. So which of you got it right? Do we try to comprehend the system? Or as Einstein put it, God does play dice with the universe? Or do we pick up our hands and say, God, it's your world and it's beyond me? The truth is, both perspectives are correct. There are many things that we understand, and God wants us to understand those things that we can know and that we can comprehend and that we could grasp. And that's why God gave us a mind. And that's why God chose to employ logical systems and patterns in ways that we could understand the world. Study of science, all those patterns. The study of Torah, all of its branches. It's about understanding systems, divine systems. Yet just like we have to know what we can know, we also have to acknowledge, my friends, that there's a lot more that we do not know. And there's even much more that we do not know that we do not know. Verstehst? So, the Alter Rebbe used to say, you cannot ask a question. It's a desire. God wanted this world, right? And the very concept of a desire, you can't ask God why, because the very notion of why is, it's not just God's reasons are mysterious. It's that the very notion of a reason is a human need. It's not a divine one. Where did I get lost with all this? I want to ask you a question, my friends. Just think for a moment. Do you see a pattern in your life? Do you recognize a rhythm? Can you perceive a plan, a plot, a storyline? If I were to ask you today, what is the theme, the message in your life story? Can you answer me? Can you answer me? What's the ultimate mission of your life? Why did your soul come into this world? What are you meant to accomplish? Should you even try to answer the question? How do you even go about answering such a question? If you had a chance to ask God this question, what do you think God would answer you? Now, on one level, it would seem that, perhaps we're here to do what we're good at. We all have certain sets of skills, affinities, attraction, habits, whatever it might be, tendencies. Some of us are better at crunching numbers. Maybe we like to bake. Maybe you like computer programming, fashion, making clothes, building homes, giving speeches, teaching, practicing medicine. I see some doctors here, or law. Maybe sitting in the lab and figuring out our DNA, playing football, singing in the opera, whatever it might be. So knowing these definitions and our limitations could often be a source of great comfort. It's a vital need. You know the story, a man comes to see his rabbi, says, I need a job, rabbi. I can become a dancer, I can become a singer. Which one should I choose? Rabbi says, become a dancer. Why, Rabbi? Have you seen me dance? Rabbi says, no, but I've heard you sing. What better proof is there that all the personalities and aptitude tests, and you name it, there's IQ, there's EQ, there's SAT and LSAT and right brain and the left brain tests and all types, all these things out there. And perhaps some of these models and scores are more useful than others. Who knows? I actually was going to go for an aptitude test. I never wound up doing it. The question is, it's important to know what you enjoy and what comes naturally and what you're good at. Right? It's important, and it helps us to understand our purpose, our mission, or whatever it is, a project we're involved with, our career. But that is far from all. Just as it's true with the secret of creation, with the secret behind the mitzvahs, it's also true about our life's journeys. There is what we can know and understand, and there is that which transcends our grasp. At its core, in its source, the soul is pushing, it's throbbing. It's our mass of divine energy. And reason, rationality can only get us so far in appreciating the true plot of our lives. Sometimes in life, we are faced with challenges that seem as though they are meant for another person, not for me. Why do I have to deal with this? How in the world did I end up with this mission on my lap? It doesn't come naturally to me. It's unreasonable to expect me to do it. We think, God Almighty, why did I end up in this place, in this time, with this person? It's just not me. But reason is only part of the story. Sometimes the soul is tasked with doing something that seems unreasonable because it comes from a place that is beyond reason. Sometimes our ultimate purpose lay in such an experience which could never anticipate logically. At times like this, person is to dig deep to a place beyond definition, beyond what makes sense, beyond what's reasonable, and into the unknowable.
We are part of the divine, and the divine transcends reason. Much of our life's mission transcends reason. We can't intellectually fathom the reason for every journey we take in life, for every situation, for every encounter, for every reality we're faced with. Can I explain why some people, God forbid, been abused as children? Can I explain why some have endured such grief as youngsters? Can I explain why some of us were born into opportunity and others into destitution? Can I explain why some of us have nurturing, beautiful families and why others experience so much dysfunction? The word why would be a profane question. It reduces the journey of our divine soul to our limited logic. Can I explain why some of us have grown up with mentors who empowered us and others with teachers who crushed us and people suffered to the old age? Can I explain why some of us made stupid choices when we were younger and others made wise choices? Can we go back and change it? And every morning, what do we say in davening? Ashreinu, ma tov chalkeinu, u'ma noyim goreleinu, u'ma yafa yerushaseinu. Happy are we, how goodly is our portion, how pleasant is our lot, and how beautiful our inheritance. What are these three things? Our portion, our lot, and our inheritance. Some things in life come to us by way of effort. We work for them, we earn them. This is our lot. It's the total of my work, my labor, my sweat and blood and tears. Some things come, chalkeinu, it's our, forgetting the words. Some things are coming as an inheritance. Right? We carry the genes of our parents, of our grandparents. We all carry issues and blessings from our family history. There are many things we have that belong to the family, and that's how and why we have to deal with them. But then the final one is what's going on? Ashreinu, Ashreinu, Matev Chalkeinu, Umanoyim, Umanoyim, Noyim, Noyim, Goyraleinu, Umayafa. Okay, Manoyim, Goyraleinu. What do we say here? Our goral, our lot. There are things that just seem somehow to land on our lap. That is your lot. When you win the lottery, you didn't do anything to deserve it, right? There's no explanation for it. Lottery results are supposed to be completely random. When you want to give something to the person who deserves it the most, or the person who makes the most sense to give, you don't just decide in let's flip a coin, let's see, or buy a lottery. That's why lot, goro, represents those elements of our lives that we cannot account for rationally. We can't work it out. So here is something, a profound idea explained in Tanya. Talmud tells a story how Rabbi Yosef asked his friend what mitzvah was his father's greatest. With what mitzvah did his father live the greatest? It's a question, Talmudic question. And his answer was tzitzis. Talmud relates how many sages spoke about a special mitzvah that they were, it's called Zoyer Tfei, they were particular to be careful about. So the Tanya asks, but everyone's obligated in all the mitzvahs, right? So what's the specific mitzvah? And it's explained in Tanya, for just as with the organs of every human being, every organ has its own specific, particular, special function. The eye is to see and the ear is to hear. So too, through every commandment, there radiates a special and particular light from the light of God's infinite blessings. And though every soul needs to be reincarnated in order to actually fulfill all 613 mitzvahs. Even so, this special care with a particular mitzvah is necessary only for the sake of an increase. And to do more, we need more enthusiasm and passion and excitement. And when we have that extra zeal, that's what it means to do the mitzvah even more. Zahir could mean to be more careful. It could also mean with more light shining, more light of the soul, more excitement, more passion, more enthusiasm. That's all part of the mitzvah. And so in Tanya it explains what's the idea of the Gora Aleinu, our lot. I can't always understand why and how I ended up with this mission, my unique connection to this situation. For whatever reason, I'm in this position in my life, and yet this is the ultimate purpose of my existence. God in his transcendent essence chose my soul for this task. So hopefully now we can go back to our question of Mordechai says to Esther, and with what he convinces her to make that fateful move to go into Achashverosh. Mordechai offered arguments why she should go, as we discussed yesterday. He told her she's going to die regardless. He told her that she and her family would be lost if she didn't seize this moment and stand up for her people. But then he tells her the most powerful thing, even though it seemed like the weakest one. He says, who knows if this is not why you were chosen queen, why you are in this unique position. This Neodea, who knows, is not a regular it's not your typical doubtful, request. It's an entirely different way. What Mordechai was telling Esther was, this calling for you to enter into the chamber of the king on this day when you're not even called in. This will bring about the salvation of your people, or risking your life to do so. Why you? I don't know. I can't explain me, Odea. I can't explain it logically. Why you're in this position, why you deserve this, why from all the women in the world did Esther need to endure this journey? Mordechai says, Miodea, who knows? It's beyond das, Miodea, beyond human knowledge. The ultimate secret of the soul's mission in this world is often inexplicable. It's beyond our comprehension. It's rooted in God's essence, beyond reason and logic. The soul's journey is essentially a transcendent mystery. Mordechai was not telling Esther to do her job. He was telling her that this was her ultimate mission. The purpose of her entire existence, unlike all such moments, it's rooted in a place that is beyond sense, just like God himself. Esther may well have given reasons why she shouldn't go or she should go, all that. But the Talmud is telling us, yes, she had logical reasons, logical reasons why she shouldn't go. But Mordechai says, you know what? You're taking the risk. Because if you're in this position, there's a reason, there's a purpose. And that's what pushed her to go beyond logic. That's what pushed her to just go, to do it. And for ourselves as well, sometimes we have to just dig beyond, find space within ourselves to beyond our limits of our mind to do that which we need to do. There's a story about a student, a disciple of the Alter Rebbe, who perhaps the story captures Esther's extraordinary self-sacrifice that she was willing to risk herself. Talking about a while ago, some 2 centuries ago in Russia, there lived a scholar. His name was Rabbi Yosef. He was an exceptionally gifted man, both in his mind, and he was very humble, a real person of humility. And he knew this man was very wise. He knew all of the Talmud, both the Talmud Bavli and Talmud Yerushalmi by heart. He was well versed in the books of Halacha and Kabbalah. Very, very brilliant person. Now this Rabbi Yosef was considering applying for the post of rabbi in several large cities. And being a chassid, he went to ask his Rebbe for a bracha. But the Rebbe said to him, no, for you, it's better. You should be a balagala, a wagon driver. You think about this guy, a scholar, a wise person, a wagon driver. Well, 2 days later, he comes back home, tells his wife what the Rebbe said. She said, if that's what the Rebbe tells you, you go and you be a wagon driver. That's what you went to the Rebbe for advice for. Advice on what? Advice on what carriage you're going to buy now. You just go. Do it. Do what the Rebbe told you. Go find out how to do it. Anyways, it was hard for this man to be a balagola, and he was, after all, such a wise scholar. But here he was learning the ropes of how to be a wagon driver. And for the next while, he's driving people to their destinations, taking people on trips wherever they had to go. That's what he's doing to earn a living. He feels like, what a waste. And each day he would krechts, what am I doing? But his wife would remind him, you went to the Rebbe for advice, what your purpose is. He told you, you have to be a wagon driver. Anyways, he's there, he's doing his job as a wagon driver. And slowly but surely, I'm going to cut this long story short, but one day he has a businessman who asks him to take him to on a particular trip. And it's a very cold winter morning, and he's feeding his horses, he's getting them ready. And the man says to him, it's a 2-day journey. He says, I'll gladly take you, but I'm telling you now that I don't begin at the crack of dawn like other drivers. I'm a Jew. I believe in God. And every morning I spend an hour in prayer. That's fine, says the businessman. Maybe the second day I'll get another driver. The main thing is, let's go. Let's go on our trip. All my baggage is here. All I want is, let's get going on the trip. So the rabbi wasted no time, hitched the horses, and within 15 minutes or so, they're on the road. They're on the way. Along the way, of course, what does a Talmud Chacham, a scholar like Rabbi Yosef do? He's studying, he's reminding himself all the Talmud he studied, and he's thinking that what will become of me? All day I have to look at the backside of these horses. What's going to be of me? Can't understand the Rebbe's advice. That night, they stopped off at an inn. Before they retired, the businessman came to pay him for the journey, for the trip, and he said something about finding another driver that would leave early. Shook hands, and the innkeeper showed them to their rooms. In the morning, Rabbi Yosef woke up early because there's a custom called Tikkun Chatzos. Tikkun Chatzos is at midnight, one wakes up, washes their hands, and says a prayer, oftentimes crying about the destruction of the temple. It's obviously not just about the bricks and mortar of the temple, but it's about lamenting everything that came with it and our exile and all that it symbolizes. And his heart was broken enough with his position as a scholar instead being a wagon driver. So you can imagine how heartfelt and emotional his prayers were. When he finished, he opened his Gemara. He continued studying. Then as day broke, put on his tefillin, began to pray. And just as he's about to put his tefillin away, and he didn't know what the rest of the day was going to bring, all of a sudden, he hears crying. And who is it? This wealthy man who he's driving, who he's taking on a trip, who said he was going to go with someone else. The man begs him. He says, I want to put on your tefillin. The man just broke into uncontrollable tears. And he said, please forgive me. And he was praying, and he was out of, can imagine what this man was like. He collapsed on the floor with his face in the ground, and just his body shaking and heart-rending sobs. And Rabbi Yosef is watching this in disbelief. He doesn't know what's going on. When the man finally calmed down, he told Rabbi Yosef that he too is a Jew. He said, but looking at him, you couldn't tell. He said for years, decades, he abandoned the Jewish lifestyle. And he said, last night, while I was trying to sleep, I was able to hear through the wall you're crying. At first, didn't bother me. I didn't pay any attention. This is not my lifestyle. I'm not a practicing Jew anymore. Then I started to get angry because it was disturbing me. But then slowly it woke something up inside of me. And he remembered that when he was a boy, his father used to pray like that too. And he forgot all about it. As a young man, he already changed his lifestyle. And he decided at that moment, it's been too long. He wants to be a Jew again. And so they continued their journey. And on the way back, instead of going to his destination, they decided to visit the Alter Rebbe. And as they came to the Rebbe, I think the Alter Rebbe had passed on. So they were standing, or maybe it was both the Alter Rebbe and the Mittler Rebbe there. Don't remember the details of the story. But the Alter Rebbe told them, now you've finished your mission as a wagon driver, and you could go on to fulfill your mission as a rabbi now. This man was able to return to his Jewish roots. And it's a story about a man who was faced with a challenge, a mission. It seemed wildly at odds with his own conception of who he was. He thought he was a brilliant scholar, a man of immense spirit. He was asked, he wanted to be a rabbi, and here he becomes a balagala, wagon driver. It seemed like it was far beyond, logically didn't make sense. But ultimately, he dug deep within himself, completely redefined himself, and met the challenge to these extraordinary results, where he was able to take a fellow Jew, inspire and ignite that soul to return to its purpose. Why him? We don't know. But this was his mission, his task. He had a mentor and teacher, the Alter Rebbe, who was able to advise him and guide him and show him how he could fulfill his mission. My friends, I think I've gone over time. But let me say, this is true for each and every one of us. We're all involved with lots of stuff, aren't we? We try to, whatever work we do, whatever things we do, we want to enjoy, we want to make sense, and that's important. But there are times that the ultimate purpose of my life is maybe in the experience, maybe in the job, maybe in that opportunity, wherever we are in our journey and our trip. Maybe I won't find out, maybe I will find out. If you would have asked Esther what likelihood she would have of saving the Jewish people, of being the queen before all this, would she have known? Would she would think you're insane. Me, queen of Persia? Me saving the Jewish people? But of course, hindsight's 20/20. Never run away from an opportunity. Never dismiss a moment that falls into your lap. There's a soul that only you can save, a heart that only you can mend, a person that only you can uplift, the situation that only you can fix, and sometimes in the most bizarre and inexplicable ways. That's life. Curveballs, the opportunities. The Baal Shem Tov taught us a soul comes into this world for 70, 80 years just to do a favor for another, whether it's physically or spiritually. Imagine you're living all these decades, doing all these mitzvahs, yet there's one deed that trumps them all. One act that captures the ultimate purpose of our soul's mission here on earth. One gesture that benefits the soul more than anything else. And because this is the ultimate reason it came to the world, and sometimes, like this Balagala Rabbi Yosef, we have to leave our comfort zones. Sometimes, like Esther, we have to take risks. That's it, my friends. Let's do what each of us can. This is what Purim is about. That's what Purim means. Purim means lots. On Purim, we're instructed, drink ad lo yada, till you don't know. It doesn't mean we have to get drunk like a drunkard. It means to have the courage to embrace our life's mission by having the confidence, the acute clarity to transcend our own logical patterns and structures. And that we'll be able to, with that, fulfill our mission in this world, fulfill our purpose,
find our purpose, do that which we need to do, and make the world the ultimate better place that it needs to be. And that's why God put us here, because each of us has our unique role, purpose, mission for why we're here. Now, I know there's only we've exceeded our time, but I do want to take a few more minutes just to go through quickly some of the halachas that we have to that are relevant, that are important, that are pertinent to tonight. So remember to add Vial Nisim in tonight's Amida. Remember either to dress up in fancy dress or to wear Shabbos clothing. We have after the Shemona Esrei tonight, there's the long Kaddish, and then the Megillah is read. After the Megillah, there are certain times we're going to say certain verses out loud. Just follow along. If you're not going to be in shul, make sure to read the Megillah yourself. After the Megillah, we are going to say the Ata Kaddish as you would on a Saturday night, the Matzah Shabbos, the complete Kaddish, and Aleinu. And of course, although the main Purim meal happens tomorrow, but you still should enjoy some good food tonight. If you come to our shul, we'll have delicacies. And ideally, one shouldn't read before Megillah, but if you need to, you can. There are lots of rules about reading the Megillah, which I'm not going to discuss now, because I guess we'll leave those for the Balkara. I'm just trying to think of what rules you have to know for tonight. Not much more I could think of, but Kiddush Levana is something that is done tonight. It's actually the last night to do it. So if you haven't done it yet this month, then make sure to sanctify the moon tonight to say Kiddush Levana. Now, tomorrow is a busy day. It's a big day. It's an important day, the most joyous day in our calendar. It's a day that you have to really celebrate and do what you can to celebrate. So tomorrow morning, Shacharis, there's no Tachnan, there is Torah reading, and there is also Megillah reading. If you can't be in shul for the Megillah reading tomorrow, there are so many times of Megillahs being read all over town. Please touch base with me if you want to arrange a time. If you can't hear the Megillah, at least read it in your leisure at home. Remember to send out Mashlach Manas, gifts to friends, at least 2 types of ready-made food to eat to at least one person, and Matanas Levionim, charity to the poor. Make sure you enjoy a meal. There's a lot of laws related to the meal, especially since it is before Shabbos. So just try to make sure that you get it done. The thing is, you want to have an appetite for your Shabbos meal. That's why ideally you want to do it earlier. There is, some people have a custom of Paras Mapa Mekadesh, where you extend your Purim meal into Shabbos, which has its own laws, which I'm not going to get into right now. In addition to that, enjoy some Hamantashen. Okay, what else comes to mind? Ladies and gents, give me a few more ideas. It's 30 days before Pesach. We start getting ready for Pesach. And the laws of Pesach are all relevant and important. Stop eating matzah. No eating matzah. If you want to eat matzah, today's your last day to do so. From tomorrow on, you cannot eat matzah. Any other questions? I can't think of any other particular rules or laws that come to mind. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, we're going to conclude our shir right now, right here. And wishing you an easy, pleasant remainder of your day. Fast well. Enjoy the rest of Purim. Have a great Purim. Celebrate. Have a great time. Looking forward to see you soon. Zekazant.
I just want to say bravo, Rabbi. Today was an inspiration. Thank you.
So much. Thank you.
you.
All the best. See you soon.